Welcome to this video. This is a tutorial on how to make macros and what macros are. A macro is something that can increase productivity, especially in a business, and really make life quite easy. A macro is a small computer program that you can make that will do whatever you want to do and do so very quickly. It can go onto other spreadsheets and read the information off of them and pull it back into this spreadsheet, or it can create folders anywhere in your computer. It's a very powerful piece of equipment. If you notice when your Excel or your Word says enable content, that's because if the document comes from an untrusted source, somebody could have written a macro that would harm your computer, and so Word or Excel defaults to having no macros be able to run, or you can't edit the document, things like that, to prevent bad things from happening. So you can write viruses with macros as well. To start writing macros, you open up File and you choose Options and you say Customize Ribbon and choose this Developer tab over here and say OK. Now it gives you this nice Developer tab, and I'll write a basic macro today to give you an example. Let's say I want to make a template for a financial report. I'll say record macro and I'll call this Notice I put an underscore here. That's because the name of a macro should never contain a space. And I can make a shortcut key. So every time I push, say, Control-Shift-D, it will make my financial template for me and do so very quickly. I can do something like Control-S, but that's the key to save the document, and I don't want to push Control-S to run the macro thinking I'm going to save it. That can mess something up. So I always recommend pushing Control-Shift-S in order, or Control-Shift-D or something, because the shift can differentiate between running the macro and your other hotkeys. We'd like to store the macro in this workbook. You can also do a personal macro workbook, which could make the macro universal or applicable to other workbooks, or in a new workbook, but this workbook is fine. And I'll add a quick description. Now when I push OK, the computer watches everything that I do, and it will say stop recording. I can push this when I'm all done with the macro. So I can start off by saying something like financial report. And I can say income and have an income column, and maybe I'll say items, amount. I come over here and say expense, items, amount, and I can make an equation where I'd say equals this plus this. Now, this is all very basic Excel, and I can Control-C, Control-V to get the same equation there. And I'll just stop right there. We'll call this an extremely simple financial report, but this is all that we need for our example. One last thing, I'll go home and I'll make this green. And we have a basic financial report. So I'm going to go to my Developer tab and stop recording. I'll delete all of this and I'll bring this format back into conformity. So when I want to build my financial report, I just push Control-Shift-D, and it builds this financial report for me all autonomously. And this is a still an equation, so I can put 1 and I can put 2 in here, and it will make 3 just like the equation should. So I've got a template with working equations that can be built with just the push of a button. That's an example of how to record a macro, and you can do all sorts of things. If you want to insert rows, then you can insert rows while recording, and the macro will remember that, so that way I can maybe insert a few rows and have another financial report come in after that. A lot of possibilities, and record macro is a very, very easy way to create a macro. It's not as versatile as programming your own, but it's a good way to start. So have at it, and in the next video we'll be going over how to actually go into the programming environment and actually write the code yourself and start with the programming fundamentals of how to do that. Hope this video was helpful. If it was, please subscribe, and I'll catch you next time.